Welcome back to The Rancher's Voice, the podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the pulse of today's industry. From policy changes to leadership stories in the Western lifestyle, The Rancher's Voice dives into the stories that matter most to ag producers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Rancher's Voice. We appreciate you joining us today. Like the last few weeks, we will be doing one last episode interviewing candidates with our board of directors, people who are running for the board. And so this week, we will be interviewing our candidates from the North Central District. And so this one's a little bit different from the last two. We have two seats open here. So running for that first seat is Rocky Forseth. Then running for seat 2 is Trina Jo Bradley and Kevin Elias. So listen in as Ellie gets to know them a little bit more.
So today we have with us Kevin Elias. He is running for our board seat for the North Central District. Kevin, how are you this morning?
Very, very good, Ellie.
Great.
Thanks.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've grown up in Chinook most of my life, and me and my wife Jen, and along with my two kids, Bo and Alexis, we have a cow-calf and yearling commercial operation north of Chinook, Montana. So
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about your ranching operation.
well, we run around 500 and some other cows and 200-300 yearlings, and then we do some farming for hay. We're the main ranch is just north of Chinook, about 15 miles, and then we have another piece of ground we rent on the Canadian line. So.
Kind of all over that
Kind
part
of all
of it.
over, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So how did you get started in ranching?
So I was fortunate enough to have my step-grandfather, Jim Pursley. He never had any kids. He married my grandmother and took me under his wing as a little kid, so I got to work with him throughout my life until he passed away in 2013. And then my grandmother in 2018, she had turned I guess it'd been 2014. She turned the operation over to me and my wife Jen. So.
Wow, awesome. So what are some leadership roles that you have had in the past?
So I've served on the Montana Association State Grazing District since 2016. I'm currently sitting as past president. What else? I've been on the. I just was recently appointed to the Montana Grass Commission here this past winter. I've served on the school board since 2019 in Chinook. I've served as board chair the last 2 years, and then I've been the 4-H council president since 2018.
All right. So why do you want to be on Stock Growers Board of Directors?
Well, I think the leadership roles are very important, and there's a lot of issues, and I know it's really hard to get people to serve in them spots that are willing to make the meetings and voice their concerns, and I think the Montana Stock Growers does an outstanding job of battling for us in Helena against some, most of the time, some of it's pretty ridiculous legislation. So.
What are some of those issues that you're passionate about?
Water rights and grazing, and then mainly water rights and grazing, I guess, would be the ones I'm most passionate about. We run on quite a bit of public land, and I know that can be tough issues even amongst our own membership, but they're very, very important to me in my livelihood, along with our community in Chinook.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So how have you been involved in Stock Growers in the past?
I've been to a few meetings. I joined a few years ago to the state. I've been a part of our local affiliation, and then recently they'd asked me to sit on the land use committee, so I've been participating in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of new perspective would you bring to the board of directors?
I don't know if it's necessarily a new perspective, but maybe just a local, maybe smaller to mid operation mindset, and just try to keep common ground amongst all membership. And sometimes we get a little bit worked up or impatient if we don't agree with something, but we got to make sure we find that middle and common ground. So.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, and we wish you the best of luck.
Yep. Thank you, Ellie.
All right. So with me today is Trina Jo Bradley. She is running for our North Central Board of Directors seat. Trina, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I was raised on a ranch west of Depouillier, Montana, which most people have probably not heard of, but it's there, a little map dot. And then I went to college, and I came home and accidentally fell in love with a rancher, and now I'm just still ranching. But it's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your ranching operation.
So we have a ranch on Birch Creek, which is on the southern end of the Blackfeet Reservation. And we run Black Angus and Hereford Cross cows, and we raise some horses and some very pretty girls.
Yeah, yeah. What are some leadership roles that you have held in the past?
Oh, so many. I tend to be bossy, so I just take over everything that I do. So I was lucky enough to serve on the Governor's Grizzly Bear Advisory Council in 19, I think it was. And since then, I've just taken over everything. So I've been the chair of the Stock Growers ESA committee for 4 years, I think. And I am the chair of the Montana Conflict Reduction Consortium, which deals with wildlife conflict and producers. And then I serve on several other boards that have to do mostly with grizzly bears.
Mm-hmm. So why do you want to be on Stock Growers Board of Directors?
So they asked me this question in my interview, and I said, because John Grandy told me I had to. I just feel like I've been part of Stock Growers now for at least 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I started out in the leadership series. We were the first class, best class. And then I just kind of started working my way into things, and then I took over the ESA committee as chair. And I feel like I've gotten our policy book where it needs to be now as far as the Endangered Species Act is concerned. And so now I'm looking at where best my time would be served. And I think moving up to the board of directors would be the logical next step.
And what issues are you passionate about?
Well, grizzly bears, obviously.
Yes.
I spend a lot of time on grizzly bears and wolves, but mostly just everything that has to do with agriculture. I spend a lot of time talking about mental health awareness because that affects everyone in ranching, whether you want to admit it or not. I obviously spend a lot of time on conflict prevention, but there's also other things that I try to pay attention to, at least, like marketing alternatives, disease, weather patterns, all the things that have to do with ranching.
Yeah. And what perspective would you bring to the board of directors?
I think I would bring a fresh voice. I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm younger than some of them. But I also have a different perspective because I live in the northern part of the state where there's not a whole lot of representation. And so I'm hoping that I can bring those ideas from that part of the country to Stock Growers and make sure that Stock Growers is serving everyone in Montana that needs to be served.
All right. Well, good luck, and thank you for submitting an application.
All right. Thank you.
With me right now is Rocky Forseth. He is running for our North Central board seat. Good morning, Rocky.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I guess North Central Montana, Fairfield, Montana is where I grew up. I lived in a lot of other places between college and we found ourselves back home there just a couple of years ago. My favorite job is being a dad. My next favorite job is I'm a superior livestock representative. I work for Allied Genetic Resources as well, and I find myself on several ranches throughout the year, and I enjoy very much about just some of the work that I get to do. And then at home for recreational purposes, I guess, we have a little set of seed stock cows. We raise registered Sim Angus cattle and a small backgrounding enterprise as well.
All right. So can you expand a little bit on your ranching operation, what that looks like for you guys, how long you've been doing it, that sort of thing?
Sure. It's actually unofficially, I've owned cows my whole life. Officially, we leased everything from my family on January 1 of this year, and so it is relatively new from a check writing standpoint, if you will. But my wife and I would be the third generation on my family's place to own and operate there and run cows. We headquarter and kind of winter on my grandparents' place on my dad's side there, and they homesteaded there in 1941. And then our summer place is actually where my grandparents kind of hung their shingle, and we've owned that land has been in our family for about 70 years. And so there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of history associated with that, and we're kind of trying to mark our own path, so to speak, and we're venturing into the seed stock business. That's, I'm deeply tied in the Simmental side of our business, and I would never call myself an expert, but I'd sure enough call myself an enthusiast of the Simmental breed. We like hybrid cattle, and so that's kind of where we focused. And then on the superior livestock side of my job, we see a little opportunity and maybe a need for backgrounding and kind of starting some calves out of that region, adding some weight and maybe upgrading them from a class standpoint. And so we do a fair bit of that. Most of that happens kind of November through the new year, and we clean out and reset and get ready for calving season in April and May.
And what are some leadership roles that you've held in the past?
Yeah, I guess that starts pretty early. Heavily involved in 4-H and FFA growing up. I was a state FFA officer many years ago. But that sort of planted the seed, for lack of better terms, and I very much enjoyed that. As of recent, I'm the president of the Montana Simmental Association. Yeah, I've been the young stock growers chair for the last year or so. I replaced Ian Glennie when he came on the board, and prior to that, I was the vice chair, obviously, and so. Had a little taste of leadership there at MSGA in what I'd consider a non-voting role, but I would be excited to take on that role in the North Central region.
Mm-hmm. So why do you want to be on the board of directors?
Yeah, we just discussed this, and I think it boils down to three different parts. The first for me is it's a time in my life when I can get away, for lack of better terms, and I can devote the time. Always something I wanted to be involved with. I've always had interest in involvement here, but I needed to make sure that the timing was right. My kids are 7 and nearly 6, and we're involved. They're heavily involved. Obviously, they're in school and things like that. But we're not going to baseball games every day, and we're not playing football or volleyball every day. And it's not like, the school load at home isn't like high school sports or something like that. We do our fair bit of rodeo in the summer because we're of mutton busting age, but that's not a huge time commitment. I will say, though, that the timing is kind of right. We still have, I can still get away from the ranch and things like that. And so from a time standpoint, it seems like a good time to do it. But maybe the two more important pieces are I feel like I need to be able to look my fellow producer in the eye, or I need to be able to talk to a rancher that I run across in my professional life. I need to be able to sit down with them and say, man, that's an issue we worked really, really hard on, and we're proud to hang our hat on that. Or that's an issue we struggled with, and we fought really hard against that. And the chips didn't fall the way that we had hoped, but we worked our hardest for you. And I want to be able to say that without reservation. And so being as involved in it as I can kind of lends to that a little bit. And the third piece is I find myself on about 60 or 70 ranches a year. All of those ranchers, all of those operators understand the importance of what gets done at MSGA and what gets done in these policy organizations. But I would argue that most of them say that they don't have the time, and they don't. I drove by 14 combines on the way down here, and so much hay that was down, and there's so much work to be done on the ranch. It's hard for these guys to get away, and a lot of them they understand the importance, but they don't want to come sit in a boardroom, and maybe I have that skill set. maybe I have at least a little bit of ability in terms of voicing my opinion, which in most cases is going to be pretty similar to the opinion of our membership. And so maybe I can use that skill set to benefit those 60 or 70 ranchers that I work with on a yearly basis.
Mm-hmm. And finally, what issues are you most passionate about?
Well, I think a big chunk of my professional life is associated with marketing. And so any issues that kind of land in that bucket, so to speak, are certainly ones that I'm going to take a not necessarily a liking to, but sure enough an interest to. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you the ones that I struggle the most with are water. So my plan of action with any water issues is to ask Ellie what the right thing to do is and do whatever Ellie says.
Works for me. All right. Well, thank you, Rocky, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us this week. We really appreciate you. And follow Montana Stock Growers on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And subscribe to the Rancher's Voice podcast wherever you get podcasts. Appreciate it, and we will see you next week.